morning, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna go get it tomorrow. So I didn't check again. I went all the way out there. Oh, checked out. I was like, oh, dang. But they had one at the Perry brand, which is all the way on like the southwest side. I know. It's like Southport Road, Southport and Harding. So I drove down there. I was like, oh man, got it.
Hell yeah. I found a PDF on the internet.
Did you?
Yeah. We ready? Wonderful. Can everybody hear us all right? Thank you, Mimi.
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm seeing hands. Wonderful. Somebody speak so we can make sure that we can hear y'all.
Can you hear me?
Oh, no, we can't. Okay, give us 1 second. Make sure that we're connected to the right speaker, maybe.
Keep talking at us so we can see it. And we can't hear you, so you can say whatever.
Yeah, keep chatting.
Whoever just spoke,
Yeah, we have already read the book.
anything?
Still no, still
Nothing.
no.
I can hear the people. I can hear you. I just
Hey,
missed you. So,
Cass.
hey, Sarah. But yeah, I can hear you. I don't think they can hear us.
1 second, y'all.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Somebody give it a try now, maybe?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, there it is. Wonderful.
Nice.
Thank you, Nas. Awesome. Yeah, shout out to our wonderful tech guy for figuring that one out. Sweet. Let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Mumbo Jumbo Community Conversations. Well, technically, the Mumbo Jumbo Book Study Series. My name is Chinyelu Africa. I will be one of our conversation facilitators for tonight. I'm also joined by my good friend, Mimi Zakum. As some of you may know, for those of you who don't, Mimi and I are both members of what is called Scarabus Consulting. And a little maybe after the check-ins, I'll have Mimi talk a little bit about what Scarabus Consulting is, the story of how it came to be, and then we'll go ahead and get into the conversation tonight. But the skinny is Scarabus does a lot of work around helping to transfer the various lessons around relationship management and leadership development and community building that the Kepler community, the people of the Kepler community have been, just gathering and processing and storing for years and years and years. So we thought, hey, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz is a, really powerful book in terms of like a lot of those lessons. A bunch of us have also read some of his other work, including Beyond Fear, The Toltec Guide to Freedom, I think is the full title. So we were like, okay, for this book study, we're doing a book that's really about, a lot of these lessons, or that's really relevant to a lot of the things that we've learned and the things that we try to teach just around like how to be in relationship with people, and how to build a healthy relationship with yourself, So we were like, let's bring in the Scarabus team to walk us through some of that. So um, in a second, like I said, I'll pass it on to Mimi to talk a little bit more about Scarabus, and then we'll actually get into our discussion of the text for today. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Our friend Meg has the physical copy. Would you hold that up for the camera for us? Yeah, the physical copy. But first, as always, we got to get started with our check-in. Um, Those of you who are new to the space, who've never had an opportunity to join a Kepler conversation, the check-in is a ritual that we do in our community just to make sure that we are, keeping the people around us as the top priority first and foremost. It's something that we do to take the temperature of the room, see where everybody's at, see if anybody needs anything before we get into business, and to just make sure that, we're taking care of our people and taking care of each other. So what that typically looks like is everybody will go around the room, they'll share a number and a color that are both supposed to kind of represent, how you're feeling at that time. And then we'll do a check-in question as well. So typically, I like to do a check-in question that's like related to the topic for conversations like these. So maybe I'll say, what's a story that you told yourself for a very long time that you have had to unlearn over time? Yeah. Nobody's jumping at that one, so I'll start it off first. For those of us that are new, please do share, how you found out about the space and what made you decide to join tonight. But yeah, my name is Chinyelu. I'm feeling like a chalkboard green 8 right now. I'm feeling pretty good. Um, and I think I grew up um really feeling like it was important for me to be special, and in the sense of like it was important for me to do something great, to be somebody great, to leave a mark on the world. And I think that I've realized that one, that there are a lot of different ways to leave a mark in the world, not all of which will have people writing songs about you for generations and generations to come. And that's okay, you know, but also, even if you don't leave any mark on the world, I think that that's okay too, and I think it's really just about, having a good time while you're here. So that's what I try to live by now. And I will pass it to Mimi.
All right, greetings, y'all. Mimi Zakum here. Feeling, well, actually, my color I'm feeling is amethyst, and there's someone on the call named that, so that's very exciting. I'm gonna say like a 10. Glad to be here with y'all. Very grateful. And two things came to mind. One, I'm the baby of 4 children. And my family did a lot for me growing up, and I struggled with the story that I like couldn't necessarily figure out how to do things for myself. So that was a lot of my 20s was like a bumpy road into my own agency. And then the other one I thought of was like sort of the idea that like I guess for lack of better words, that like work is the enemy. Like that, like I just like my goal would be to like just enjoy and try to avoid like things that I didn't want to do, but then learning that like doing the right work that is important to me is extremely fulfilling and actually something I really enjoy and actually maybe part of the reason why I'm here on this planet. And I will pass it to Colin.
I'm a 5 purple and I don't think I have one. So, huh? I've never made up a story in my mind. Yeah. Um, ah, ah.
Okay, I'm Meg. My color is amber. I feel like a 10. Everything's great in my life. I'm old. I learned a long time ago. Don't take things personally. Something that comes to mind to me that I suppressed for a while that I had to unlearn was when I was young, there was a particular thing that I wanted to be. And very young, kindergarten, first grade is when I first, felt it. And I was told all through my years growing up that it was for losers and it was for dropouts and I'd never make any money and I had to go to college and get an education, which is what I did. And when I turned 29, I said, later, I'm doing what I want to do. And I did it. Yes, 2 years ago. So yeah, I had to unlearn all of that. It took a long time. What people were telling me I could not be or shouldn't be when I wanted so desperately inside and could feel it and knew it's what I was going to do and be. And it took decades for me to unlearn that. Thank you.
That's like often people in like the like final stages of this life will say that's like their number one regret is just not doing what they wanted to do because they were afraid what other people thought of it. Yeah. Heck yeah.
This is heavy. All right. Ooh, I'm gonna buy some time. Ask me the question one more time, Chinyelu.
What is a story that, yeah, turn that down. It's a little hot. Keep going. There, that should be good. What is a story that you told yourself for a long time that you are now working to unlearn?
Nas here. I'm feeling like a purple 9.5, and let's see, not everybody's your friend. That's what I had to learn. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that right there. Oh, camera on me now. Hey y'all. And I'm gonna pass it on to the Zoom to Ren.
Okay, hi everyone. I am feeling number maybe an 8 today, and I think I'm a teal, like a light blue. Um, my story that I'm working on unlearning and having a fun time doing so is that I guess the idea that being good or being like a good person is what matters more than being yourself. Um, and I'm having a lot of fun, um, like thinking about what my personality really is and not just doing the right thing or being a good, daughter, all these things, whatever it is, um, doing like self-development.
So relevant to the text. Thank you, Ren.
Anyone want to go next?
Pick somebody.
I'll pass to Sarah.
Thank you so much, Ren. Hi, I'm Sarah. Use they and she pronouns. I didn't realize we were doing a scale of 1 to 10. I was gonna say the number 12 because I just really
12
like
is
the number
perfect.
12.
Yeah.
So 12 is the number I'm feeling. I chose this sweater today because I just saw this green and I was like, this is a nice green. So I think the green sweater is my color. And a story that I've really had to actively unlearn for myself. Um, I don't how do I phrase this? The narrative that I'm leaning in towards is that forgiveness can be a really beautiful thing. The story that I had and took a lot of unlearning is that I had a lot of examples of people who held grudges around me growing up. Um, I don't have time for that. Forgiveness is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I will invite in Liam.
Hello, hello. It's Liam here. Today I feel like I'm feeling probably around a 6, and I would say a fading yellow. I'm really getting tired end of the day, but yeah, but something that I had to unlearn. I'm just gonna keep it kind of general and simple, and just say certain male gender roles that just completely don't make sense, and things that have to be navigated, through your family and through, just through, just feeling kind of connected to your family, but also that feeling the need to, just, something connected with family. And yep, that's about where I'm going to leave it.
And then pass it on to anybody who hasn't gone yet. And we still have Anita.
I think, oh,
I'm going to pass it on to Miss Fair because I miss her.
Hi, everyone. I'm a Yellow 10 aspirant. And I say aspirant because at one time, prior to April 13th, I was always a Yellow 10. I mean, hopped out of bed in the morning, just so happy for another day to just run into it. And I'm hoping to get back there. But the thing that I had to unlearn was I had to unlearn that you can't do it. I had to unlearn that the most insurmountable challenges you can maneuver. It's about getting through and around and over the challenge. It's not about what the challenge is. And you just are just stronger because you do. And you gather up friends along the way if the challenge affects other people. In my particular challenge at a very young age, I was in senior high school and I wanted to go to college so bad. I wanted to get out of San Antonio. All I could see for myself as a life in San Antonio was unacknowledged drudgery, unacknowledged even to myself. And I just wanted to spread some wings and get out of Dodge. And it just was nothing in no way. I just couldn't even see it. So I just started picking at the challenge, get out of Dodge. I was in senior high school. So I figured I'd work real hard in school and get a scholarship and go off to college. Didn't happen. So then I figured, I said, let me just find out if there's just what kind of way. And I just started investigating. And I found our junior college. At that time, they were junior colleges. The first 2 years of college was in, they're now called community colleges, but back then they were straight up colleges with the first 2 years. And I got a job making $107 a month on the night shift. That was the most you were going to make on the night shift. So I said, man, I'll never get to college on $170. Well, I found San Antonio Junior College where the tuition was $9 a credit hour in 1961. I was thrilled. All I could think about is I'm going to get started. I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm going to at least get started. And when I finally got into college, I said, oh man, I did it. And so, but I just didn't think I could. There just was no way. My parents were just not going to, I didn't even know anybody in my community that had even gone off to college. I've heard of those young people, but I didn't know any personally. And so I had to, that helped me to know whatever the challenge, you can do it. If you can't do all of it, you can do a piece of it, and you're going to feel so great about that piece. So that's what that's what climbing that mountain and getting over the top helped me to understand. And I'll pass it on to, oh gosh, my eyes aren't lining up right now. I can't see this tiny little writing on this on this screen here. I think the last name is Jones.
hi everyone. I'm Amethyst. I am the digital creator for Ujama Community Bookstore, and I saw that you were having this book discussion on a book that I'm actually reading already, or was already
Hey,
reading. So I've been very excited to kind of learn more about you. I've been hearing about you for a long time. And let's see, my color is amethyst, my number is 8, and let's see, the first thing that came to mind for the question was your silence will not protect you, or my silence will not protect me. So I'll just leave it simple so we can go ahead and get started. I can't actually see who's all here either because I'm joining on my phone. So forgive me if I can't pass it off to the next person.
let me think. Did we hear from J. Rue, Cass, and Mama Pambana?
I guess I could just go and then I'll pass it.
Sounds great.
Alrighty. Let's see. My name is Cass. Uh, hold out of breath. Just got from the park. Let me see. Oh, color and number. I'd say about a 22 golden yellow. Yeah, that sounds right. Let's see. Something that I had to unlearn. I had to unlearn that no matter you can do what you love at any age. It does not matter your age. Is if you love it and you truly care for it, it doesn't matter how successful you are at it, how old you are, all those things don't really matter. It's, if you're alive and breathing, you should do it if it's something that you really, really want to do. And let's see, I'll pass it to Jeru.
Yeah, hello everybody. Jeru here. I'm gonna go with a red and black. I'm feeling like 27 after that question. And then as far as things I've unlearned, I think one of the biggest ones has been not mistaking being nice for being kind to people. Um, and that I should feel good about showing up where I am. Yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that for now since we got a couple other people and I want to get to the book. I'll pass it to Miss Pambana.
Hi, everybody. Sunlight, white, infinity, and the one thing I'm not working on unlearning it in my 50s, I finally unlearned it. And it was when I was 4, my mom and my dad separated. I got raised by my dad, but my mom was like my caretaker and my best friend. And so I felt that she didn't love me or that I had some flaws and I was inferior. And so I had an inferiority complex for a long, 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 long time. But then in my 50s, after a lot of self-help development and I guess getting in contact with my spiritual self, which is a long journey, I realized that um, at least my connection to the creator is love. And so now I feel whole and I am no longer inferior. So I'll pass it back to Chin.
What's wrong with this one? Oh, okay, we're good. Sweet. So now
Uh,
I'm gonna.
does Chin sound muffled to other people? Because it just
I
sounds
sound. I sound muffled.
Yeah, you sound like the gain is too high up. You might need to turn.
Yeah,
All
like
right.
underwater.
We're gonna switch. We're gonna switch to the other mic. Is that better?
Much.
Okay, great. We're gonna switch to the other mic, and maybe we'll be able to use that one today. Who knows? So for now, I'm gonna pass it over to Mimi to tell everybody a little bit about Scarabus Consulting. And then at the end, we'll share another opportunity that you'll have later on this month and also next month to get connected with Scarabus a little bit deeper. And then after that, we'll start talking about we'll talk a little bit about Don Miguel Ruiz, the spiritual tradition, that he comes from and teaches in, and then we will get into the book. So, while you Mimi.
Huzzah. Okay, well, thank you, dear. Yeah, so well, I guess I'll start just a little bit about me. So I moved to Indy in 2015. I was doing AmeriCorps, figuring out how to support urban farmers in Indy. And I came to an event at Kepra, and when I walked in, I was just like, yeah, this is where it's at. It was a response to grocery store closings in the neighborhood. And Chinyelu was actually one of the youth facilitators of this conversation. And one of the things I loved most about it was people were understandably upset about these grocery stores closing and like, what are we going to do? But the conversation there was very much like, well, what do we want to see and how can we create it here with the people in the room and the resources we have access to? And then I joined the group that was like, we don't know, but we're going to figure it out. And that became the Community Controlled Food Initiative, which is still operating today. We have distributed over 80,000 pounds of fresh produce from our local farmers in Indy to our community through a co-op model that we built from the ground up using the art of the start. And it was a very transformational experience for me to be a part of. Mrs. Fair was one of my coaches and other leaders on the project, always being like, now, baby, you don't have barriers, you only have challenges, and challenges can be met. So go figure it out. And so a couple years later, Em was like, hey, pass out these business cards for Scaramus Consulting. And I was like, what are we doing? Like, what? Like, he was like, the stuff that we do all the time, like, people come to us and are like, what's your secret sauce? How do you have actual like youth leadership? And like the people who come through your space, I can see like they're not the same on the other side or like a few years down the road. They're doing all this stuff and they're like glowing and they seem to love what they do, and you guys get all this stuff done and you don't even have any money. Like what is going on over here? And Scaravis Consulting was us like creating a formal entity that aims to answer those questions through educational programs and experiences. So we do community wealth building in all forms. And yeah, that was how we started. We wrote a blog about the experience of building CCFI and was like, yeah, this, we could talk about it and you could support us to do this. So we got our first client, someone who read the blog and was like, hey, we want you to come to this summit and talk about, your lessons in social entrepreneurship and, how you use relationship building to get stuff done in community. So that was 2017. And we've grown a lot over the years. Worked with a lot of university clients, other organizations, business owners. We did like some entrepreneur cohort trainings with the Edna Martin Christian Community Center. We work with a lot of the local universities here, some of our national networks. I mean, it's just been a wild journey, but we're really like always trying to respond to the moment and what people are asking us about and calling for. And I don't have to tell anybody that this moment is crazy. And, one of the things that we feel we do best is around healthy relationship building and how doing that lets us get everything else done. So yeah, we're doing this series to focus on healthy relationships, especially conflict transformation has been something we honed in on a lot the last few years. So yeah, we'll have more programs coming up sort of around these similar themes, but just wanted to build community about it in this moment intentionally. So, and I'll pass it to Chin if you have anything that you like to say about Scaravis or your experience so far as a social entrepreneur in the Scaravis enterprise.
Yeah, so I'll share a little bit about my experience briefly as well. I My journey into the Kepler Institute is a little bit unique, just because I'm one of the lucky ones who just, by fortune was born into this community, So I've been around this organization since its inception. Grew up, just like around the founders, just like watching the work emerge, like really immersed in the culture. And so I think it was about really during my there's that saying that like fish can't see the water that they swim in or something like that. And so I think that I identify with that very, very, very deeply because I think that for a long time, I sort of like took this organization for granted, just as, oh, another thing that I have to go do on the weekends or my summer job or, the thing that my, elders do or whatever, blah, 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 blah. We summer camps and CCFI, and why are all these people yelling at me, But I think it was really like, so like I had like I've had a lot of different relationships with Kepler throughout the years, just like exploring the different aspects of that. But I think it was during my sophomore slash junior year of college. The pandemic had hit, was in full swing. People were in the streets protesting George Floyd's murder. And I had gotten famous on TikTok for making political videos. And at a certain point, I just kind of started to feel like I didn't really know what the hell I was talking about. I was just like repeating a lot of buzzwords and engaging in a lot of drama, but didn't really have enough like experience to be like offering anything to the conversation that would move anything forward, And so through like that reflection and thinking about like, okay, well, what does it actually mean to like create institutional solutions to institutional problems? Oh, well, you should probably be building or a part of an institution at some point. Oh, like the one that you grew up in. Okay, it's time to go back home, So I stepped back into the Kepler work about what was that, like 3 or 4 years ago? Yeah, about 4 years ago now. In a really and like really stepped, in the past I'd been like, well, I need to make a little change in my pocket, or I want to do some video editing stuff, or blah 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 blah. But like when I stepped back in this time, it was really about I want to learn how you do this, how you build a community organization and keep it running and like grow it to the size where you can like employ people and put resources in people's hands and start like, supporting community projects. And so, getting involved with Scarabus, I think was like really is like a recent step for me in that journey of like, study and like exploration and like discovery. It allows me to like really look at the work through a very like I don't want to say like almost like an analytical sense, it like really like forces you to break it down to like the science, of community building is like kind of like how I think about it sometimes. Science and art, it's both. And you have to know something to be able to teach it, and so in order to be able to teach some of these tools, I've had to learn them a little bit deeper as well. And so really I think it's just been really great. I've really enjoyed it a lot, just the opportunity to, learn more about like I feel like we don't know, a lot of us don't really know about our own cultures, like we don't really ask those questions about like, why do we do things this way? Where did this come from? How did this institution come to be, And I think it leaves us vulnerable in a lot of ways. So I've really enjoyed becoming more familiar with my community and its history and its institutions at that much more deeper level. So yeah, yes. Nas, please put scarabus.com in the chat so people can find us. www.scarabys. that's going to be in the chat for you shortly so you can learn a little bit more about what we do. And hey, maybe hire us for something. That would be awesome. So yeah, so without further ado, let's get into the conversation for today. We're going to start off briefly by talking a little bit about Don Miguel Ruiz, the Toltec tradition. That's what the book opens up with. And then we'll start breaking down some of the more specific arguments and like philosophical points that they put forward. And we've done a lot of talking so far, and we will continue to do a lot of talking, but we also want this to be a conversation, so we'll take pauses, we'll ask for questions and stuff. But please, if you have a question, if you just have something you want to say, raise your hand, come off mute, just hop in, we don't mind any sort of any of that. So yeah, so to start, uh
About the Toltec.
yeah, that's a great idea. So Mimi suggested that before I give what I know, just asking like, does anybody else have knowledge or understanding or any familiarity with, the Toltec, Don Miguel Ruiz, and this spiritual tradition that we're exploring today? You, Hey, you don't have to be an expert, if you know anything, just give us somewhere to start. Yeah, all right, all good. Hey, maybe not. That's okay. That's okay. That's why we come prepared. So I'll start with the Toltecs, and I'll give you sort of like what I have found as like the Western, like anthropological view, and then I'll give you the view that the author speaks to. And according to the scientists, the Toltecs were a Mesoamerican culture, really active and well known in around like uh, Mexico, what we now know as Mexico. Um, Reaching prominence from 950 to 1150 CE. So, long time ago. And some people recognize them as the cultural and intellectual like predecessors of the Aztecs. So basically, like the this civilization gets credit sometimes for being the civilization that the Aztec civilizations come from. uh, Pre-Columbian, obviously. And then when we start getting more into the a little bit more about how they were like perceived by like the people of their time, the term like Toltec can be translated to mean like artisan. These people were seen as like artists, crafts people, like experts, basically in a way. So now so we've got that definition. Um, Moving a little bit more over into learning a little bit about our author, Don Miguel Ruiz is a uh, trained surgeon and medical doctor, and also spiritual teacher and leader, who is said to be a descendant of, this Toltec tradition. Specifically, he's part of a there they speak of there's this, I guess it's like a role in this culture called the Nagual, somebody who is basically, reached some form of enlightenment, a spiritual teacher or mentor. And this is something that like it is something that you can become. Some people are born this way, just kind of like naturally with that inclination, but you can also learn to be a Nagual, by going down this path of like spiritual discovery and like self-reflection. And so Don Miguel Ruiz, comes from a long line of people who have, practiced and passed down these spiritual teachings in secret for a long time. But now, according to, a prophecy, now reaching a time when it's time to bring these teachings back out into the world, to hopefully, help humanity, achieve, more of its potential than it's currently exercising. Let's just say that. So the Toltec spiritual path really speaks a lot about freedom from fear, specifically freedom from the fear of death. It speaks about tools for, embracing life and love and joy, and not creating unnecessary conflicts, not creating any more conflict or suffering than, the world will naturally inflict on us. So yeah, that's I guess that's like a general summary. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all. If anybody has any questions or anything any even reflections, anything that you maybe want to add or anything that brings to mind for you. Maybe even similar belief systems that folks might be familiar with. Yeah.
Well, I just share, and I don't know what's going on with that mic, man. It's just really irritating me. I'm gonna tell you. I hate noise. I want clarity. But anyway, and reading it, and I read it a long time ago, but I'm rereading it for this discussion. And he starts out by saying that what he's sharing is like universal, and that there are people all around the world who've had these, what they call esoteric, which means more spiritual ways of looking at moving through the world, understanding and interpreting it. And he mentioned like ancient Egypt. He mentioned the Kabbalah, which is Jewish tradition. Christians have their spiritual science, which usually typically you have to get initiated into, and which he did too. And he talked about how because people misused it, they weren't sharing it. But now, since he's been initiated into it and he's been called to share some of it. And so this book, The Four Agreements, addresses that. And so I just wanted to lift that up, that people of color all around the world, and then people, I guess, who would say who are more spiritual, have had these spiritual systems of viewing the world that are not as material, but also just as real, or are real, because my belief is everything comes from spirit. And then there's this saying that the material is spirit at a lower vibration, and spirit is material at a higher vibration. So it's the frequency and the energy of the atoms and how they move and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, the stuff that he's sharing comes from, like, I guess you could call it collective wisdom, collective knowledge of uh the divine, I guess I'll say so.
Yeah, thank you, Mama Pambana.
Um, throw in there that he talks about how the role of a Nagual is also this sort of entity that can translate between the material and the non-material. So on a similar kick, yeah, then that is a strong concept in a lot of spiritual traditions. And I think Papa Legba is another figure who's seen as someone at the crossroads of the material and the non-material, the visible and the unseen. And it's interesting to see that thread throughout spiritual traditions.
Ren says, beautiful explanations, Miss Pambana. Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that oh, I saw you came off mute, Mama Pambana. I wasn't sure if you were going to say something.
No, I was just gonna say thank you.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely think that piece that this is like, this is not, these lessons are not necessarily at their core specific to this cultural tradition. There's echoes and things that, you see brought up, in other belief systems. And so, maybe as we're going into the discussion, just be thinking about that, think about any similarities you see, and don't be afraid to make those connections, because they help us, increase our understanding. But yeah, so great. We've got that, that's our basis, that's our foundation. So let's get a little bit more into the lessons, and into the philosophy itself. So the book starts off with this introduction to the concept of the dream. And I'm not sure if the Four Agreements came before Beyond Fear or vice versa. But I do know that this idea of the dream is something that he talks about in both. So if you do read Beyond Fear, which is a little bit longer, definitely be paying attention to that. But basically, the this chapter literally starts off with this quote: "What you are seeing and hearing right now is nothing but a dream. You are dreaming with the brain awake." How do folks interpret that? Mimi says crazy. I saw you come off mute, Ren. You can't hide.
Um, so hard to explain. Maybe just like picturing you all in some sort of like on some like a heavenly game show. You're like in the yeah. That's why I didn't want to say it, but
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, word. Okay. I like that.
Dream.
How I kind of interpret it is as I guess dreams is something that you manifest. So maybe life is just something that you manifest. Like if you maybe, if you gravitate towards more positive things, then more positive things will happen to you because you know, you're um you're manifesting those outcomes. And so maybe that's what he means by your life's like a dream
Yeah.
because like, maybe it's something that you can manifest and cultivate in a way.
Yeah. Almost makes me think of this like this idea of like, being a lucid dreamer, the idea that like because it's something that's happening in your mind, there's an aspect of it that you can control. Yeah.
Oh, I really like that. I was also thinking of it being kind of like a dream is something that you interpret. And
Yeah.
so, well, we all have,
Mhm.
we're all experiencing the same moment. We're all experiencing it slightly differently. And that is
Yeah.
just our interpretation of any given moment
Yes.
with
Yes.
all of the experiences and baggage and everything that we bring with us, right?
Khalid, what do you think?
I'm glad that the book is very short. That's one good thing. But if I'm being serious, a little tired, so I'm trying my best to listen, but it's hurting me. Um, right now, um, I searched. What's it- I was trying to see if I could read the book before I got here, but I couldn't. But it's like, is one of the amendments, is that what it was? Agreements on freedom of speech? Is that what that is, or no? Okay.
I'm having trouble hearing everyone, and I don't know if that's just me.
We're passing around one mic right now. I just repeated the question to Khalid, so the only person you should be able to hear right now is him. So no worries.
I can't hear him at all. I don't know if that's just me too. Sorry.
He's not saying anything yet that I think of. If he is, I can't hear him.
Maybe it could be like, you think you know something, but you really don't. I don't know. Or like, keep forgetting the question. We're all dreaming even though we're awake. Is that what you said? Okay. I can answer that later at the end. Okay.
Appreciate it. Anybody
Yeah,
else want to speak?
yeah, I want to say that I guess to me, when I think about the term life is a dream, I mean, for me, I know that, and this is how I move through the world, that the experience that I'm having here is temporary or transient. And I feel like, a lot of times the body that I'm inhabiting is like when I put on a shoe or if I change my shoes. And at some point that, the real me who's having this experience and has in some way figured out and is also co-creating it, because I believe that I'm co-creating it at the same time that I'm having it, and that it is a dream, and that at some point this dream will be done, and then I will transition to a different form. But this is not my true form. This is the way that I'm showing up right now for whatever experience the collective and my individual self is trying to have. So I often had dreams where, like, because we say dreams is when you lay down and you go to sleep and stuff like that. Well, they were as real as when I'm awake. And so for me, it's just very much about these are different, I feel like, experiences that we're having and that we're co-creating. And depending on, I guess I would say, the state of awareness and where you are, uh, determines how you experience it. But I feel like there are different levels of awareness, and I definitely, for me, I don't believe in death. So I feel like I know that the individual that's inhabiting this body is a shoe I'm wearing today or a dress or whatever. And at some point, I'm going to be done with this experience and transition to a more truer form and then maybe pick another experience. Who knows? I don't know. So that's what makes me think about a dream. Because like when you lay down, like you're doing, you're having all this kind of stuff. And then you say, oh, well, I've learned to now. Sometimes, I'm like, okay, enough of this. Time to get up or time to go do something else. Or
Yeah.
you can change it. I don't have the power to change my dreams yet, but I'm working on that. Like I don't like this. So let's do something else. But then when you wake up, you can do that. You can say, I don't like what's going on in my life, or, I want to try to do these things and let me figure out how I can work with others to help that happen and to co-create it. So it's all,
Yeah.
to me, it's just a different level or of existence, and it's still a dream. It's not who we truly are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that word co-create. I think dream, it's a verb that's inviting action and imagination, and it's something that's not finite. And when I'm thinking about dreaming, and I think now Miguel starts to talk about this in that first section, when it's on page 2. I also have the physical copy if anyone has it. Talking about like dreams of the planet. And just thinking about, as you're talking about Scarabus and you're talking about your role with community and relationship building, I think a question I think about a lot is how are we in right relationship, or how are we not in right relationship with one another? And I think there's something really beautiful about the word dream that invites, it's almost grounding. It's an attunement to, um, you know, people around me aren't just a bunch of NPCs. Like, we all are actively dreaming, and I believe in the goodness of humanity, that my um, that I would hope that other people are also dreaming and imagining, how could these things, how could this world be different and be better?
Yeah. Yeah.
I really appreciate your statement, right relationship,
Yes. Yes.
right relationships, because of course we have relationships with people that make us feel bad or humiliate us or we don't even like. But the right relationship is always on you also. The other person may not even have the understanding of, as Pambana said, their experience in this life. We don't know what happened before we got here or what happens after we, as the medical industry calls it, RHCs, respiration has ceased. We just don't know. But the ancient traditions have always let us know that there are many ways to think about this. There's some just lovely, lovely transitions. I know there's an Egyptian one that says, as you stop breathing, you take this boat down the Nile, and then you run into the Lady of Justice and make sure your heart is as light as a feather, and how you've treated other people about that right relationship. That that is a place to aspire to, and an intentionality is what I'm trying to say. No matter who you're dealing with, can you help them? Can you be in with your intention and help them see that the right relationship will benefit us all? You know, I like to tell young people, make the world you want to live in right where you are. Make that an intentionality, because you too will be 90 years old at one time, or however old you are. What kind of community do you want to live in? What kind of community do you want to raise your children in? And that right, really put that word on it, not just relationship, but right relationship. I love that. Where'd you get that right relationship statement?
I would say many a mentor, and that's I can't attribute it to one person. I'm sure you could Google it, and there's somebody who is degrees smarter than me who has credited that. I will say that and in full disclosure, I'm a pastor here in Indianapolis, and something I think about and what my faith um one of the values of my faith it is, and one of the reckonings that the Christian church really has to do for itself is we really need to work on being in right relationship with all of creation. That, I believe in a divine being that asked us to be stewards of creation. And Lord knows we are not in right relationship with all of creation. And,
Not stewardship, but we think it's ownership. Ownership of the land and the water, and not
there's a lot of
stewardship.
people, yeah, I would love to exegete that, but that is a conversation for a different day. So, yeah, yeah, right relationship. And I think there's something that's beautiful. There's reciprocal, relationship is not just a one-way street. Um, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that and just lifting it up in the conversation.
I was gonna throw in there that what Ambana said made me think of this saying, I'm not a human having a spiritual experience. I'm a spirit having a human experience. I also think of that saying of we're dreaming all the time, just speaking to that. We're always creating stories, and we think that our experience is reality, but it's something that we're making up as we go. And every person is doing that in their own way.
Yeah, I was also gonna jump in on the right relationship boat. I think it's so awesome that you brought that into the conversation because one of the things that repeatedly came to my mind, I think is like as Amethyst was
Mhm.
talking, as Mama Pambana was talking, as Khaled was talking a little bit. Um, One of the things that I was reminded of is this interview with Tyson Young Kaporta, who's an Aboriginal writer and author and philosopher, and he uses the phrase "right relationship" in that interview. But the other thing that he speaks about that I think is really relevant to what we're talking about right now, this concept of the dream, is this idea of right story, wrong story, and the idea that all of us tell stories that are all a part of the truth, but are never the whole truth. And wrong story is when you take one of those fragments of truth and basically lift it up as if it is the truth, disregarding the other stories that other people are telling you around you. And that right story is like the opposite of that, in which you are seeking truth by like seeking out stories, seeking out different perspectives and like sides, like aspects of, what we all understand to be reality, and that you get closer to a right story the more of those perspectives that you gather. And yeah, I think that Sarah also brought up this idea of like the dream of the world. I think that that's kind of like that's really what this concept comes down to me. It's this idea that, you know, I have a version of Indianapolis in my head. So whenever I say, "Oh, I love Indianapolis" or "I hate Indianapolis," I'm really thinking about a few specific things or a few specific people. I'm thinking about, if I'm talking about I hate Indianapolis, I'm thinking about the weather and the potholes and the traffic. I'm thinking about I love Indianapolis. I'm thinking about my friends and family. I'm thinking about the places I like going to. I'm thinking about the weather when it's nice. And but none of those things are really Indianapolis. And Indianapolis is going to be different depending on who you ask to describe it. And separate from everybody's descriptions, Indianapolis is its whole other thing that none of us can really ever comprehend or understand in its like entirety. Nobody knows every person, every building, every tree, all the things that make up this thing. So we all have this image of it, this story of it, this dream of it. And so all of these different dreams, all these different perspectives and stories come together to create what in the text is referred to as, you know, uh uh the dream of society, the dream of the world. And we're gonna switch our mics real quick to see if that helps with some of the audio issues. So give us a second. Test, test, test.
Are you talking, Chin?
Can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, great, cool. Were you gonna say something, maybe?
That was a great
It's
podcast.
not good though.
It's not
Yeah,
good.
it's all
Okay.
gargling. I can't figure out
No,
what.
I don't know what's going on. I mean, normally y'all, we can hear y'all crisp and clear, but today the mic
Yeah,
didn't be cooperating.
we're gonna have to rock it with this one today. Worst comes to worst, let me know if it gets really bad. There's one more little Hail Mary that we could probably try. But we'll continue with this mic for now. Um, but yeah, what were you gonna say, Mimi?
I that podcast that you were talking about is called Deep Time Diligence. I just sent Nas the link so he can put it in the chat and y'all can check it out if you want. It was really good.
Yeah, any other thoughts that people want to offer on this idea of the dream? This is really the first thing that you need to kind of like understand to start understanding, like not just like the four agreements, but like sort of this like whole philosophical framework that they've got going on here. This idea that we all live in our own reality and that our individual realities make up our shared reality. Back to that idea of co-creation.
Yeah, another book that is like ringing in my head as y'all are talking about this idea of the dream, and even the shared dream is a book I've been listening to fall asleep. I highly recommend it as a NyQuil if you're into that kind of thing. But it's called The Holographic Universe, and in it there's a section where he talks about dreams as a kind of collective subconscious that we all exist in. And it also, and the book itself is around like quantum theory and quantum mechanics. And, the idea of a dream is interesting to me in that way too, because it often sounds like um, being able to connect the past, the present, and the future. And oftentimes I see dreams kind of as, in quantum mechanics or whatever, something doesn't exist until you observe it. And oftentimes I see dreams as kind of that observation, in that moment, that picture, that idea, that concept that you're able to picture and observe in your mind. And, with the right level of intentionality, that kind of sets a path towards it, and brings it into being in real time. So, we often have a saying here where it's like, um, something yada yada, mystic mumbo jumbo, but it's like if you set your intentionality the right way, the universe conspires with you, something to that effect, right? And I know for myself, I've been, um, in my own journey, just beginning to become more conscious of those moments where the dreams begin to seep into reality and vice versa.
Yeah, so I think we've got a pretty solid understanding of this concept of the dream. So if anybody, wants to add to that as we continue, if another thought pops into mind, feel free to share. But for now, we'll go ahead and get into our next concept, which has to do with this idea of the domestication of humans. And I'll start this piece of the discussion off with a question as well. You know, or we talk about what they talk about in the book. When you hear this idea of the domestication of humans, what do you think about? And if if we think of humans as domesticated, what does an undomesticated human being look like? Mimi said me. I would say Mimi. So M's definitely also a great example. M's probably the least domesticated human I've ever met.
Oh my God, it's like meeting a wild beast, but he just lives in your house.
Yes, love.
Across the street and grab another pot I need.
Oh, okay.
I'm just letting you know, I'll be back in a second.
All righty.
I guess I'll speak to it in the sense that I read that and I was like, hmm. And like I said, it's been some time, but then, he talked about how we domesticate cats and dogs and cattle and that kind of stuff. And we are animals, but we don't typically see that as what's happening to us being domesticated. We call it socialization. But I mean, in reading what he had to say, and I think all of us have bumped up against it, like, because you get introduced to the view that your family, your community, your culture, and then the larger society of the rules of what is good, what is bad, what you shouldn't do, and what you should do, and all these kind of things. And there's a point where you've like, some of this just does not serve me. It does not work for me. It's not right for me. And so then there's a question about what do you do? Because in the context, I guess, of wanting to be social, not wanting to cause a lot of rift or problem, you have to ask yourself, am I going to go along and get along, or is this something I just can't live with? And so I'm gonna have to step left and deal with that and live with that. So it really made me reflect on the fact that we do domesticate ourselves. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily bad, because you got to teach children how to eat, how to feed themselves, how to put their clothes on, tie their shoes, and all those kind of things. So there's certain things that we come into the world we don't know how to do. But then this thing about norms and morals and judgments of people and things like that, that is where, like, I think we should be encouraging our children and ourselves to challenge. And like she said, to ask ourselves, do these serve being in right relationship with ourselves, with humanity, with the planet and all life forms and those kind of things? And if they don't, then we need to let them go. So that's what I'll say. But
Feel that what he calls the domestication is you know, it happens once we're born. You know, we're born these pure energy, light beings from God that is just love, pure love. And it starts the minute we're born. You know, we got to quit, this baby's got to quit crying. You know, I remember I was with my mother-in-law one time, and my niece was skipping, and she couldn't skip. She was 6 years old. She's like, "Stop that skipping. You walk right." Well, we all know now that when you skip, that means you're happy and you're full of love and you're full of life. And, you know, so it's things like that. You know, yeah, we have to be taught how to tie our shoes, how to get dressed, but it goes deeper than that. It's just the damping of that energy and that light that we're born with. And by the time we get in school, we're afraid, you know, we dampen children's souls to make us feel better because they're not lining up with how we feel. We want them to make us feel good. And that's where it starts. And that's what I think this domestication is like.
I definitely agree with that, like right there. Being a being a child and also working with children, I've realized working in a school how adults want kids to be like quiet, very quiet, well mannered, um, can't be loud. If they're loud, then something's wrong. If they're too hyper or too, then and I actually work with a child with autism in the school, and um, he throws fits because that's the only way he knows how to communicate sometimes. And so, it for some people it annoys them. I've noticed this, and they've kind of scolded him and me as well because of the noise. And it's just like, okay, well, this child doesn't know any other way to communicate. He already has a difficulty communicating, and this is why he's tantruming. And I just, yeah, it's very much like, we kids should be seen, not heard. They should only play when it's appropriate, and then they give them like the appropriate amount of time of playing, and then playing is done, and you have to get serious. Like it, I do, yeah, I definitely see it. It's an everyday thing with me, and I try not to be a part of it, but I also know like the thing that Ms. Pabana said, like you have to, you want to be accepted, you have to, we have to act certain ways or domesticate ourselves to get along, so it's like I know I have to teach him how to be domesticated in a way so that he can be able to be in this world that isn't really designed for him. So it yeah. So I don't want to go on a tangent, but it's just so much to that. Just so much.
Ren, I saw you come off mute a few times. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I would say to Cass, thanks for doing that work with them and being accommodating for someone that's probably really meaningful in their life. And I was also just gonna agree with what folks have said so far and maybe see this like separation between the domestication of the like norms, morals, and judgments, and then something that's very different from that, which I see as like the more feral human or something, would be some words like presence and curiosity.
Yeah, I think a lot of what, on that question, first of all, I think everybody spoke to this process of domestication really well. And I think like that's basically exactly what they talk about in the book. It's this idea that there are all these rules for society and how you're supposed to be. And the moment you're born, your parents and your siblings and your teachers and the police and the media are all telling you this is how to be a human being. You know, this is the proper way to sit and talk and act and think, you know, and when we think this, Mama Pambana is right. He makes the this connection to the way that we train dogs, and this system of like rewards and punishments that we like pass out based on whether or not they meet our expectations, now like Mama Pambana said, is this necessarily inherently a bad thing? Not necessarily. My dog needs training because if I don't train her, she's going to eat things that are bad for her. That's just because like that's how she is, and similarly, humans are a way where if we don't have some sort of teaching, some sort of learning, some sort of coaching, we might also, do things that are, maybe not good for our continued survival. But I think that, the trouble with that just comes with like, it's hard to tell where the line is sometimes between like a lesson that you teach somebody because it'll genuinely help them like navigate and learn about the world versus a lesson that you teach somebody just so that they can fit into the society around them. And that gets especially tricky when it's like, okay, technically, you only need to know this so you can fit into the society that you happen to live in, but also because you live in the society, if you don't know it, you won't be able to survive. So it's like, do you really have a choice? Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. And but yeah, I think that I like the way that Ren put it because you know, even undomesticated animals can still be in relationships with domesticated animals. You have foxes that still befriend dogs and, you know, um, these other animals that are resistant to domestication for different reasons that are still able to like we've seen like the big cats, that learn to be friends with like their caretakers at the zoo or whatnot. And so I think it's just this idea that you don't necessarily have to suppress those natural impulses towards love and curiosity and joy. You can resist some of these norms that are passed down to you. You can question them, and develop your own opinions about them, and you can still be in relationship with the people around you, with the world around you. So, yeah. Does anybody else want to speak to that point about domestication?
This may be an oversimplification, but what I was thinking is um, so being domesticated means really thinking just about yourself versus I think naturally, so when you go back to like indigenous cultures, it's a lot more communal based. I think a lot of things that we've talked about so far have been like social constructs, right? Like it absolutely doesn't have to be this way. Um, but yeah, I don't know. This is probably an oversimplification, but that's what I think of with that.
Yeah, no, no, I think that's perfect. I think that's great. And in fact, like, yeah, like a lot of the message of the book is that like because we are domesticated, we often don't recognize that it doesn't have to be this way, and this is actually one of the things that he talks about specifically in relationship to this concept of the dream, that when you spend so much time submerged in the big dream, the dream of the world, that your ability to conceive of other dreams becomes weakened. Um, but like one of the promises of this spiritual path is that like you can regain that ability to dream, to imagine other possibilities for being and living. So another piece that I wanted to bring out from this piece is this idea of like, that this value system that we're ingrained with, and I think that this is going to be specific to culture, and just remember that as I speak, because like not all people are born into a culture like ours that is like as that has so many contradictions, and is so heavily rooted in things like fear and shame. But um that's what this culture is like. And so when we are developing, when we're trying to figure out, okay, all these different stories in the world, all these different viewpoints, how do I make sense of them? We develop it through that lens of some of these are right, some of these are wrong. Doing the right ones makes you a good person who deserves a reward, and doing the wrong ones makes you a bad person that deserves punishment. And nobody wants punishment. Everybody wants a reward, you know? So I think it's and so he refers to this as like the book of law, you know, that rules our minds, you know, and just this idea that like that book of law, these rules that we live by, spoken and unspoken, is the source of all judgment, is the source of all victimization, you know, is the source of essentially like the source of all suffering, you know, because it's what tells you this thing happened to you, and so you are in pain. You know, this thing happened to you, and it was a bad thing, and this is how you should feel about it. Um, uh, and oftentimes, you know, like some of those rules in the book conflict with other rules. And this is a concept that he refers to as the mitote, which is a word in the Toltec language that's basically used sometimes to refer to like a marketplace, you know, a place where a lot of people gather, a lot of different voices that conflict with each other. And this idea that, you know, like through this chaos, you know, we have to find some way to, you know, create order, you know. And this is where this idea of the four agreements starts to arise, because what the four agreements basically are is like, okay, there are all these stories you tell yourself, all these agreements that you make with other people and with yourself, you know, like um, uh, because I'm this person's boyfriend, that means I can't do this, you know, because I'm trying to be a good student, that means I can't enjoy this, you know, and just like, uh, and they get in the way of each other, you know, it's like, I may have one story that's telling me like, you know, like, hey, if I want to be a good friend to this person, that means I can't talk to this person. But if I want to be a good friend to that person, that means I can't talk to this person. What do I do? You know? And so what the four agreements is basically, you know, it's this idea that with these four things as the basis on which you form all other agreements, you know, you can maintain that clarity, you can maintain that direction, and you can maintain that like self-security to tell you like I'm on the right path, you know. So yeah, we can get into we plan to talk about the first two today, but I did want to see if anybody else had anything to say or to ask or to offer on domestication before we start talking about the agreements themselves.
Mhm. Yeah, I just wanted to say that, and I feel like it's true no matter where you grew up. And yeah, I feel like Western culture has a lot more, and I was talking with a Kepra staff member about, you know, like people who live at the equator and where there's more abundance and how that culture reflects that versus if you live in colder places and you have to struggle to survive, how that culture reflects that. But I do think that one of the things about domestication that it requires a lot of courage to recognize that something one does not serve you and that it's harmful to others as well if it's a part of your culture and your society, and to figure out how to step out of that and how to do something different, and even how to find other people that you can work with to do that. And so a lot of times, you know, like they talk about like kids and like when they get together in groups, well, how, you know, like they can urge each other on in terms of bullying and things like that. And so to not be, I guess what they would say is a part of the herd and just go along with things takes a lot of courage. And sometimes you're alone and nobody wants to be alone. And so, you know, it's like I just feel like, you know, in the context of especially raising children and being in right relationship with each other, we have to show our children how to be more loving and kind, generous, so that they don't have to have that choice between being alone and doing what's right.
there's also, he talks about like basically domestication is so effective and successful that at a certain point, nobody has to tell you to be the judge, jury, and the victim. You do it to yourself. And you start early programming people. And then once it's internalized, it's yours, baby. Do it to yourself. And like, oh, but that also, but then that means too that like, there's still room for agency in that. Like change is hard. You're going to be swimming against the stream, but if you're doing it to yourself, then it's you. You know, you make choices, make different choices.
Um, there's this conversation around domestication is so fascinating to me on a personal level because I think it's like the question is almost like, what is the nature of a human being? You know, like what are we before all of our socialization? You know, like what are our most basic impulses? And some people will say that it's violence or it's selfishness or whatever. I think all those are boring answers. But to me, I think that the biggest thing that defines human beings as animals, you know, the same way that, like, you know, alligators are territorial, and the same way that, like, you know, octopuses can change color and shape, I think that we're curious, you know, like we explore and we remember things, and then we pass that information along to other members of our species, you know. And so I think that this idea of like breaking out of just the thing that you have always known, breaking out of just like the worldview that you were born into and exploring other worldviews and other perspectives, to me, that represents the essence of humanity, you know. And I think that a lot of the domestication is to ease that curiosity out of us, you know, to remove the desire to look outside of the bounds of what we know, you know. And sometimes, you know, maybe there's some value to that because sometimes you go exploring and you fall off a cliff, but you know, maybe not always. So
Um, on like what is a human? Like what am I? Am I? Well, one, I'm really interested in the Buddhist like perspective on some of those things, the whole other thing, but I think of it often because people ask you to describe yourself and tell your story, and it's like, you know, well, you know, are you like this or are you like that? And it's like me, I am like none of that. In this moment, I may be this way, or I think that I'm that, you know what I mean? But also on that piece, there's a really great book called Sapiens by Noah Yuval Harari. And he argues that one of the defining characteristics of humans is our ability to tell stories and like create myths that we then agree on. And sort of like our ability to communicate, cooperate, collaborate at scale, and like build this huge scale where we all cooperate based on a story.
yeah, good stuff, y'all. Yeah, so let's get a little bit more into these agreements themselves. Starting, of course, with the first one. And the first one is to be impeccable with your word. Um, he emphasizes this as the most important agreement and the most difficult to honor. We got about 30 minutes left, so I'm gonna get through just some sort of the key points on this one, and then we can open it back up for discussion. But the basic, you know, theory behind this one is it's all about the power of words. The big quote that I think that I took away from this one was your word is the power that you have to create. You know, I think like to Mimi's point, this idea that humans create stories, you know, things that we all agree on. Every scientific innovation, every feat of architecture or art or culture that human beings have ever achieved, to me, starts with a story that somebody told. Hey, we need to build this thing, you know, we need to destroy these people, you know, we need to think about this, you know, like all of those are different stories. All of that starts with the word, with an intention, you know. And so like through that, you know, like you have to recognize the power that holds, you know, in shaping the world around you. So so that's the word, you know, it's the power to create. He defines impeccable. He breaks down the Latin origin, basically to mean like to be without sin. And then he defines like a sin as something that goes against yourself. And so basically, to be impeccable with your word is to commit to not using the word against yourself. Um, and there are a few things that are important to remember in that. The big one being that the energy that you put on others reflects back on you, you know, partially because, and we'll get into this in later ones, partially because, like, you know, the things that you say about other people reflect the things that you think about yourself. But also, you know, if you create animosity with somebody and they seek to harm you because of that, that's not their fault. You know, not all their fault, you know. So I think that you know, there's this idea that, you know, you should be careful about what energy you put out into the world, because it on some level it will always affect you. A connection that I wanted to bring back to this piece, you know, we talk a lot about Sun Ra and a lot of our like spiritual and cultural conversations. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, Sun Ra was a jazz musician, artist, alien, spiritually transcendent being. And one of the big things that he talks about is this idea that words are spells, you know, that like sounds are spells. And that's one of the like specific things from this chapter that, you know, I saw a connection between, you know, just like emphasizing the idea that words have power. And so basically this first agreement just comes down to like, you know, don't say anything that isn't true or that you don't want to be true, you know, like use the word to love and build, not to hate or to destroy, you know. Um, and yeah. So I guess like my first question would be like, I would like to know like the most important agreement and the most difficult to keep. Why do people think that is?
Well, I think because it is so personal. It's about ourselves. The thing that means the most is what we say to ourselves. And it just gets deep, it gets personal. It's what the challenge is. You know, I can tell you, you're awesome. It's real hard to say it to myself. This shame that goes on, you know, and it's hard to overcome that. It's easy. It's like putting on the mask. You're great. Me, not so much. You know, so that's the challenge. It's easy to say to other people because we've been conditioned. We want to be liked. We want people to like us. We can't be truthful. You know what? You're not that great. Who's going to say that to you? You know, but we say it to ourselves all the time. So that's the challenge. It's very personal, and people don't want to get that personal.
Thank you, Sarah, for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you at the next one. You're gone already, but maybe you'll see it on the live stream.
Thanks for joining us. Bye, Sarah.
Yeah. Anybody else want to speak to that question of why is it so important and yet so difficult to be impeccable with your word?
Can you repeat that one more time? I didn't catch it.
Why is it so important and yet so difficult to be impeccable with your word, or to not use
Words or
words
worth?
against yourself?
Oh,
Word.
words. Okay.
Yeah.
Word. Okay. Okay. Hmm. That's oh, that's an interesting one. Um. Hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna have to come back. Yeah, you're gonna have to come back to me on that one. to
Oh,
think about
good.
that.
Oh, good. Hey, it probably just speaks to the nature of the agreement, Hard
Well,
to do, hard to answer. Go for it.
I'll say a couple of things. One, I think that people really, for the most part, don't realize the power invested in words. We think we just say anything, and we do, and sometimes intentionally we're trying to hurt people, and we say the words that we know will hurt them. But I don't think that people really realize that the intention, the energy that they have when they say something is creating and is manifesting and bringing about. So I think that, they just think, oh, I'm just talking it. And it doesn't really have any effect, unless they really trying to get somebody to do something. But I also think it's hard to be impeccable with your word because sometimes you're torn between what you truly want to do and what you feel you should do. And I'll just give an example. So, like, I think when I was around 42, my dad would call me and ask me to do different things, or, like he would have this kind of like drama going on, and I would get caught up in it. And I didn't really want to be caught up in it, but I felt obligated to do certain things and say yes to my dad because he raised me. But then at a certain point, I decided that that wasn't really honoring my true self. And so I had to decide, like, I just had to decide, okay, I'm gonna say yes to the things I want to do and no to the things I don't want to do, but not in a mean or spiteful way. But I have to be true to myself. And so I think that that's part of how come it's difficult because a lot of times, like it was said earlier, we don't want people to get mad at us, or we don't want to feel like, we're going to be isolated or separated. And so to choose to be impeccable with our word, to not do anything that we feel is against ourselves and that we really don't want to do, means that other people may be mad at us or may isolate us and those kind of things. And so again, that's why I said it takes a degree of courage too, because again, you have to say, okay, if this does happen, and I'll give another example. So when I was 19, no, I got to school when I was 22, 23. And when I was a little girl, like around about 7 or 8, I knew I was going to change my name. But at the time, I was thinking I was going to change my name to Cher because I thought Cher was badass. But when I got out of college, I decided to change my name, and my daddy was pissed off. I mean, I thought it was going to be the end of our relationship, and there was a lot of silence for a while, but I had to do it because I was being true to myself. And I had to say to myself, okay, if I can't repair this relationship, if daddy gonna be mad and he ain't gonna talk to me no more, I guess I'm gonna have to live with that. So again, it's not always easy to be impeccable with your word. And there are consequences. And so you have to decide, what you're gonna do.
Yeah,
I'll say
go
this
for it,
before I have to
Amethyst.
go too. Sorry.
All
But
good.
yeah, I agree with all of that. I think that we've just been really conditioned to accept things that are told about us and the things that we say about ourselves. And then I was looking at the physical book too. So on page 37, it talks about how you talked about, words being spells, but these types of spells are difficult to break. The only thing that can break a spell is to make a new agreement based on truth. The truth is the most important part of being impeccable with your word. And I think that later in the book, it talks about the parasite, right? And how you have all these different heads. You have, thousands on thousands of different heads to the parasite that all tell you different things, right? So I think that it's the hardest because there's so many tiny things that we've come to accept about ourselves and others, and that the only way to kind of break all of those things is to honor these four agreements and to live in truth, right?
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for joining us, Amethyst. I know you got to get out of here, but yes, that's
Thank you,
excellently
Amethyst.
said.
Bye.
This idea of the mitote, and I think you guys really hit it on the head. It's this combination of like not understanding the power of words and these like habits of self-denial that we develop. And I feel like it's really even deeper than self-denial. Like I feel like for a lot of us, like, well, I guess like I'll say for me, sometimes I feel like my quote unquote true self, I don't even know if I know what that means, because I've just been swimming in all these other voices and stories for so long. So I feel like I'm very recently in a time in my life where I'm starting to like categorize those voices, confront them and understand where they come from, and then making that decision about, okay, this is what I feel like represents the type of person I want to be, and this is what I feel like doesn't. But even then it's slippery because that idea of like the type of person I want to be is still rooted in like those other things. So, I think it's always a journey, and just always like trying to seeking to do better, and to understand clearer. But, yeah, it's definitely difficult because it's like, we really aren't taught to understand the self, I mean, like, we're taught to like understand the self in like a really superficial way, like dye your hair as a color to speak to your individuality, wear these clothes, listen to this music so everybody can know, but even then, that's not really I feel like that's still like trying to fit into other people's scripts. Yeah, that's conformity, exactly, but that's not really like that deeper exploration and understanding, yeah, that allows you to like have something to be impeccable to, like have something to be true to. Yeah. I'm gonna we'll get into this second agreement, and then we'll probably take about like 10 more minutes before we start giving you guys some stuff to take away and take home. And we'll definitely be, we'll pick up wherever we leave off at the next conversation. But yeah, it's been great tonight, y'all. Thank y'all so much, everybody, for participating. So, um, the second agreement, which is don't take anything personally. Yeah, a chorus of in the room. Yeah, don't take anything personally. Um, Personal importance or taking things personally is the maximum expression of selfishness because we make the assumption that everything is about me. You know, this one is really about this idea. We talked about this earlier. Everybody's got their own dream, everybody's got their own perception, everybody lives in their own world. And when you make things about yourself, you assume that other people are living in the same world that you are, that they understand the same things that you understand. And when you learn that they don't, which they never do, you know, you begin to feel the need to defend the world that you know to be true, and so that forces you to start to try to disprove their world so that they can be wrong, so that you can be right, and you're basically trying to force your world onto theirs. And that just creates a lot of unnecessary conflict. It just creates a lot of unnecessary conflict. Um, I think that one of the things that was really interesting about this agreement to me is this idea that, like, don't take anything personally, even applies to the good things. This idea that, like, sure, when you get negative comments, you don't have to take them personally, but also when you get good comment, when you get good, like, compliments, don't take those personally as well, because that is still allowing yourself to be held to somebody else's standard, and even if it's a standard that you maybe agree with, you shouldn't be saying, oh, I think that I'm a good artist because this person tells me I am. It should be because like the standard that you've set for this is what makes a good artist, so yeah, does anybody want to share about this one? I know we've got some deep connection with this one. Yeah, yeah. Anybody on the Zoom?
I guess I
Cass,
could.
yeah.
Oh. So, yeah, had some experience with that. Definitely. Being a creative and artist, and um, just it just felt like I was always trying to prove that I was an artist, and prove that I was worthy enough to be, at least like, yeah, at least to be like acknowledged as a creative or as an artist. And um, it just recently took me, which I mean, I'm still going through it, I'm still working through it, but I'm really starting to realize that like um, instead of thinking about how other people perceive my art or perceive me as being an artist, or you know, thinking about what I have done or have not done, I need to start realizing that um, artistry should be more personal, like more personal, like taking into account what what I did and what I know that what I did to get to where I am now, and what I've put in what I put into my art, and how much, you know, that how much time and energy and frustration, you know, um it's powerful. And I do feel like as artists we do look outside of ourselves for validation, and we also look for certain things to validate us, like awards and being acknowledged and fans and fame. And I just feel like we look towards all these outside things for validation, as to say like we made it or we're making it as an artist, instead of just looking within and going, you know what, I might not have the fan base I want, I I deem as successful. I might not have, you know, the accolades, but I know within myself that I'm an artist and I love what I do. Um, I I just feel like, especially in today's world, it is just so, especially like in the music industry. Well, I would say especially in the music industry, but I just feel like Hollywood itself as well. It's just um we look to all these different things to validate our artistry, when it's just, you know, I just feel like it could be just as simple as just, hey, I got up today and I wrote a poem, and that makes me an artist. Not me getting an award, not people acknowledging my work, not me having a certain social following, or having certain status, certain wealth, um, just me getting up and deciding that I'm going to do something creative, whether I get paid for it, or whether it gets acknowledged or not.
One thing I would add is just the idea of how much people project, and maybe just from a place of mental health. I think not taking things personally really helps when you realize how many people struggle with their mental health, and how much they're really just going, like, just projecting and dealing with the things that are going on in their mind.
I totally agree. I mean, I think a lot of times what you perceive from other people is just a mirror that you're projecting out, and like if something hits a nerve with you, it's because you feel a way about that inside yourself. Like it's some internal conflict. And like, so it's also true for the person who's expressing it. Like that's about how they feel internally. And yeah, I think this has been one of the most difficult and also liberating agreements for me to work on in myself. Um, yeah, I mean, I like had a lot of struggles, you know, growing up with like um just like my self-worth, and I say on like also I am the baby of four, so I also got like a lot of attention, and like that piece about like, you know, it's like the ultimate selfishness to think that everything is about you. Like I think I did struggle with that for sure as like the baby who got a lot of attention, to be real. Um but I think also like I had some really important relationships in my life with people who were caregivers, and um, you know, there's a lot of beautiful things in those relationships, but also they were dealing with really difficult things in their own mental health and the own stories that they had and were raised with. And so, they sort of convinced me that the decisions they made were my fault. And that, how they were, their state of being was, my responsibility. So that was like a big thing for me to work through, that like other people's thoughts and behaviors is not my responsibility. And really realizing, I don't know, I guess just what Ren said, how much what people express is just what they're projecting. And when I started to realize that more and just be able to not take things personally, like my mental health improved greatly because I was always finding myself really reacting to people and getting in these emotional states and these funks just all the time. Man, this is rough times. But also just working internally on like my relationship with myself. I guess kind of what Cass is talking about, like not defining myself by other people's standards and values. And just, yeah, just finding my own way to love myself. And, then it doesn't hurt as much if someone like, calls you stupid or whatever their opinion. That's their opinion. And as Mama Lisa Nichols says, other people's opinions of you ain't none of your business.
Just through my work that I've done over the past several years, I haven't taken anything personally in probably over a decade. And so being on the outside of something and seeing the turmoil that it creates in people's lives, it's devastating. It's devastating. It's almost like being, seeing, someone in an abusive relationship that they can't see, how your family members are all get out, do this, do this. And, at some point, about 7 or 8 years ago, I had to realize that everyone's on their own journey and figure it out. And it's not about me to figure it out for them because I've got to figure it out. And it's beautiful and it's blissful. But being on the outside and seeing how everybody, oh man, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that like another way that I think about it is just like it's really, really big on that piece that it's like when you assume, and it's crazy because this is another agreement, but like it's when you assume that everybody sees and understands and processes the world the way that you do, you know? And I think it's just like you get really disappointed in people when they don't, and that's just like that's not fair to anybody, you know? I think it's also, it's one of those reasons that like being impeccable with your word is so important because you kind of need that internal clarity and like security and like this is what I believe about the world and about myself to be able to say, like Mimi said, what that person thinks has nothing to do with me, there's this really funny example in the book that he's like, where he's like, if you're walking down the street and somebody says like, "Hey, you look stupid," if you're taking it personally, your first instinct is going to be like, "How does he know?" Like, do I look stupid? Really? Like, what do I? And then you start to think about like through your framework. Well, I didn't think I put my pants on in a stupid way today. I didn't think I wore a stupid shirt today, and like you didn't. Probably from your perspective, maybe from his perspective, you did. That don't matter. Yeah. Yeah, so
I do, I guess something I'm still trying to process with this one is like, um, I do think we're all like accountable to each other on some level and like have some responsibility towards how we impact each other. And like, um, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. Um, Also like feedback you get from other people is sometimes helpful. Like other people can sometimes point out stuff to each of us that we don't see. I think it's John Maxwell has a quote in 5 Levels of Leadership that's like, human beings seem endowed with the impeccable ability to size up everybody in the world except for ourselves. And I do get helpful feedback from other people, that it's, not, I don't know, it's not something that came out of my like thought or standard necessarily, but I sit on it and I'm like, that's a good point. I didn't see that. That's something I need to reflect on. So I don't know. It's like, I don't know if that's really a conflict with this agreement, but somehow it kind of feels like it could be, and I'm trying to process that.
I was really thinking about a lot of the same. Oh, Ren, were you going to say something with that?
Ren is on. Were you gonna say something, Ren?
Yeah. So Liam and I are chatting about this as well because he also had I won't share too much. We haven't talked about that, but but when people do have feedback that that actually does click and feel relevant, it's going with that idea that sorry, oh my gosh. Uh, Sorry, my grandma's clock. Assuming that everyone else or that other person is experiencing the same thing as you, and sometimes that is really important too, or like those are special moments as well, but they're not necessarily common.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I wanted to say that, and Mimi was talking about feedback. I think the goal is to get to the point where like you can invite feedback or people can say stuff to you and you decide if it has relevance. But I feel like when most of the time we're impacted by what other people say, it's either because we are not feeling good about ourselves or it's a person that we feel I guess has a lot of impact or relevance or standing in our lives. So like, if your parents say something to you, you think, dang, you take it to heart because these people, quote unquote, supposedly love me. So if they say this, maybe there's some truth in it, or like if you're dating and your boyfriend or your girlfriend say something, you like, dang, maybe what they said is true. And even if you're in, let's say, abusive relationships. So to me, it's like, there are times when people say stuff and we just blow it off. Oh, that isn't, I don't care what you have to say. It doesn't mean anything. But I think it does depend on the relationship that you have with that person and how much power you invest in what they have to say when they share it with you. But the ultimate is to be able to get to the point where no matter who it is, whether it's somebody you really love and care about and respect, or somebody that's you don't know nothing about, because somebody that you don't know nothing about could share something that's relevant. But to be able to look at it and say, is that relevant? Is that something I can use? Or is it something I need to discard? And so to me, that's the don't take it personal to get to that point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I definitely struggled with like the same question while I was reading it at a certain point as well, because like, I think it could be very easy to like interpret this framework as like sort of like that of like a rugged individualist, like, like you only have to think about what you care about, but I don't think that's really what it is. I think it's what Mama Pambana said. It's more just about like having enough internal clarity to be able to pick which scripts you do and don't want to live your life by, and like basically like picking your battles, Um, and because sometimes, you meet somebody and your dreams of the world overlap, in ways that are helpful, and their story is similar to yours in some ways, but like different enough where you can still learn some things. I definitely feel that way about my partner, like I feel like we see a lot of things very, very similarly. which allows us to affirm some of those things for each other. And then there are definitely other places where it's like, okay, well, they do things a little bit differently, but because I know that they do things differently because of what they got going on, not because of it's not negating who I am exactly. It's just like two different approaches. And now I get to explore, okay, is there something to this approach? Maybe, maybe not, or maybe there is something to it, just not something for me. So yeah, I think it's always about striking that balance. Before we get out of here, anything else anybody want to say on that? When we come back to the next session, we'll review all of these and we can rehash any thoughts that folks have. But anything anything else anybody want to say about the second agreement before we move into maybe a few tools that folks can use to start practicing some of this stuff at home?
I just wanted to hop in and say, yeah, not taking things personally. I'm right there with Mimi. Maybe one of like the single most liberating things you can do. We often talk about self-determination, and I feel like not taking things personally is just another piece of that self-determination puzzle, right? Like, how do I live life by by my terms? Um, and how do I do that if should your terms include this? How do I do that in right relationship with others? How do I do that collectively? And I also wanted to say that like the thing that I feel like I've been learning about not taking things personally is that to your point, Shin, it's really a matter of like clarity, and I think that's something that can really only be acquired through experience and reflection. And that's been a piece that I've been able to give myself a lot of grace on, especially lately, is like, man, I don't have any experience. I'm an idiot. I mean, I got some experience in some places, right? Of course, but like there's still so much more to learn. Um, and yeah, like because of that, there is something freeing about ignorance, I will say. Something like, oh, it's whatever. You just gotta take what works and leave the rest
Yeah,
as you come into it. So yeah.
yeah. I think that reminds me of that idea that like even the stories you tell yourself about yourself, you don't have to take personally because those don't always come from a place of love, or a place of like who you really want to be. Sometimes that's just those other voices. Um,
I just have to amen that so hard because that was a very big turning point for me too. Was like realizing like the thoughts in my head I didn't have to take personally. Like I could observe them, they're there, where do they come from? Oh, that's interesting. Like just because they're there doesn't mean they're true. And yeah, that's some real shit. The stuff inside your head you don't have to take personally. Whoa.
I definitely, the way that I like conceptualize it for myself now, it's like every little voice is like a different little person, and they're all just kind of always sitting at a boardroom table, and they're all just hollering over each other all the time. And then there's like the one who's like has control of the body, and every now and then he's just like, all right, thank you everybody for your opinions. Here's what's gonna happen now. So, yeah, trying to get trying to listen to that voice a little bit more. But before we get out of here today, once again, I'm going to thank everybody for contributing and listening and for being here. I'm so excited for the next one. I wanted to offer a few tangible things that maybe folks could take home and start practicing. Some of these you may have already heard before, but I'm definitely just want to like, provide some, at least like start to provide some resources that folks can use to start practicing these first two agreements. Um, uh, Affirmations, definitely a big one. I don't know if anybody's ever done affirmations here, but that the idea of repetition is very powerful. It's anybody who has ever learned a skill knows how important repetition is for internalizing like a new pattern or a new habit. And like the it sounds so simple, it sounds so simple that people make fun of it all the time, but truly just repeating something to yourself enough makes it true in your internal world, like that's, it's, you're affirming it in you, and it's like, I think it's important to remember that it's not like okay, if you repeat this 100 times, it'll be 50% internalized. And if you repeat it 200 times, it'll be 75%. There's never like a point where, okay, I've done enough affirmations. I think the right thing now, but it's just like, it's the idea that you can constantly be reminding yourself who you want to be, what you want to be, how you want to be. So I definitely urge you to think about that, put it into some words, maybe a few sentences, maybe a phrase or a mantra. And, maybe when you before you wake up or before you go to bed, maybe as a prayer before you say a meal, maybe just like every time you look, put a sticky note on the mirror, just like, something to remind yourself of how you want to think and what you want to be thinking. So that's the first one. And then the other one, more specific tool that we've taken it from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think that this people have this framework exists in other contexts as well, but it's the idea of a personal mission statement. Um, and it's really around, that question of like clarity, like how to build that internal clarity to say, like, this is who I want to be, this is how I want to live my life. And personal mission statement is defined as a document you create that identifies the big picture, the life you want to lead, the character traits you want to embody, and the impact you want to have on those around you. And that's just kind of like a sample framework. This can be whatever you want it to be, but I think in this context, it should really be about like should really come down to like, these are the agreements that I want to make with myself. These are the principles that I want to live my life by. My personal mission statement, a big part of it is the Nguzo Saba, the Kwanzaa principles. I grew up with those, and as I like understand them now, see them all as like very crucial to maintaining right relationship, like the world and those around you. But if you're religious, it could be something from your religion, it could be something from your favorite movie or TV show, if that works for you, but it's just like, I see it as a type of affirmation. In the 7 Habits, see, like, uh, Stephen Covey, the author, basically, he's like, you should review this personal mission statement on a regular basis. You should edit it and update it on a regular basis. You should have it written down on something that you can carry with you so that you can repeatedly like consult it and make sure that you're, in line with it. So it's another form of affirmation, but I think it's just like maybe something that might push you to look at some of those questions with a little bit more specificity, so yeah. So those are the tools that we'll leave y'all with for today. Um, Before we close out for real, I'll say, the next proper book study where we'll be going over the rest of the 4 agreements, agreements 3 and 4, and then the stuff that comes after that in the text will not be this month. It will be our first book study next month. This April's second book study will be a special workshop facilitated by some members of the Scarabus team, all about conflict transformation. A lot of, as we've talked about today, a lot of these agreements, a lot of what they do is about, like, how to reorient the way that you approach conflicts and disagreements and tension people, and so we were like, hey, this is a great text to help people start to learn some tools of conflict transformation, like how to not just get past a conflict, how to not just like settle it so everyone can move on with their lives, but how to approach conflict in a way that allows you to gain a deeper understanding of the other person, a deeper understanding of the relationship that y'all exist in, and to move to a new level or a new place based on that. So join us. I think it's going to be the 16th for our Scarabus-led workshop on conflict transformation. It's called Pressure Makes Diamonds. And, we'll be definitely touching on some of the concepts that we talked about here today in that one. We'll be doing the same sort of thing next month. It'll be a book study, 1 week, and then 2 weeks later, it'll be another Scarabus workshop. And it'll be like that until about April, May, June, July. July will be the last month that we do that. So, yeah. Yes. Yeah. So Mimi asked me to share the other ways that you can work with Scarabus if you're interested. Scarabus Consulting is a full service consulting agency operation. We offer workshops, like we said, that you can find on Kepra's Eventbrite page and sign up for that are open to everybody. We also, will do a private session for you. We'll do a private workshop or training or class. We talk about conflict transformation, but we also talk about things like social capital, leadership development, how to build a culture, many, many other things. We offer like mentorship services. We offer a residency program, which is really exciting. And what that is, it's not probably not what you typically think about when you hear the term residency. What the residency is, the Kepler Institute, the mother organization that birthed Scarabus Consulting, has several properties here in Indianapolis. One of which being a cooperative living space, where some of our team currently practices just that cooperative living. We have some urban agriculture programs that happen on that campus as well, some early childhood education stuff. And it's basically just an opportunity to come in and just dig in deep with us, get to know us really well, be really immersed in the environment and the lifestyle and the culture. Yeah, learn everything that comes from that. And then finally, you can also find us on Kepra's virtual platform called Alchemy Plus, powered by Mighty Networks. But that is a virtual learning, skill sharing, and social media platform that we're currently crafting into a hub for the Kepler community in the virtual world. So we have courses that you can take with like lesson plans, and homework and lectures that you can watch if you're like that. We have recordings of our previous sessions if you're more into those. We have chat rooms and spaces dedicated to specific areas of study and learning. So we got the Soil Society, which is all about agriculture, and we've got the Kepler Leadership Academy, which is the Scarabus space, which is all about leadership development and how to learn the tools of community building, and several more spaces on Alchemy Plus. So Nas is going to put the link to that in the chat, alchemy.kepra.org. Yeah, you can find us there as well. So thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Thank you for joining us as we begin our exploration of the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Shout out to the Indianapolis Recorder, a longtime friend and family and content partner in our community building work. And if you want to support the Kepler Institute and our ability to host and hold conversations like these, visit us at donate.kepler.org and leave us a donation. All righty. Thanks, y'all.